Welcome to the Speaking Jesus 101 podcast, where we talk all things evangelism, apologetics, and prayer. I'm your host, Karen Wells.
Tina, how did you find Jesus?
Well, finding Jesus was one of the best decisions that I ever made in my life. When I was growing up, I was all over Canada. My dad was in the military, and when he retired and we settled down in a small city, I didn't have a lot of friends, and I was dealing with challenges in my home with abuse at the hands of my brothers and looking for love in all the wrong places. And I just wanted someone to care for me. I became an overachiever in athletics and academics, and that did not fulfill me. And then unfortunately got pregnant as a teenager, and my world just spun out of control. I honestly didn't want to live anymore. I often walked across the bridges in our city and thought of jumping over. And then I thought, you're such a chicken, you can't even do that. And I just didn't care about living anymore. I didn't feel that life was worth anything. And so one day in my bedroom at home, I kind of looked at the ceiling and I prayed a prayer. And I said, if there is a God, and I'm not sure there is one, I would like to start my life over because I've made a mess of it. And I really didn't think there was a God listening to me. But I prayed that prayer, and unbeknownst to me, a neighbor across the street who was in university as the same as I was at that point in my life had said to his sister, "Pray I meet the girl across the street because God has told me I'm to share Jesus with her." And I didn't know this. I found this out later. And we met when our dogs had a fight. So that was an unusual meeting, but we got to be a little bit friendly. And he invited me to kind of a college and career group at his church. They were doing some social event in the park. And I went, okay, it's not real church, but that's all right. And so, I went to a couple of these events with him, and at one point, after several of these meetings, he came back to my home. My parents had gone to bed, and we were just sitting in the living room talking. And he pulled out a little booklet in his hand, and he started reading to me from it. And I found out later it was something called the four spiritual laws, and that there's these spiritual laws in life that govern things. And the first thing he said was that God loved me and had a wonderful plan for my life. And I went, well, if it's a wonderful plan, it kind of isn't so great right now. And then he proceeded to explain why things in life don't turn out so well. And one is that we're all sinners. And it's interesting because I had taken university physical education. I was going to be a phys ed teacher, and I took an archery class. And one of the things in the archery class that they taught us is there's an archery term called sin. And sin means missing the mark. And so when he talked about that we're all sinners, I kind of thought of the archery thing that, well, yeah, I've kind of missed the mark on a few things, right? And so that, we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Now, I didn't know what glory of God meant, but I did track that, yeah, I had kind of messed up because not only had I got pregnant, but in that pregnancy, I had chose to terminate it with pressure from my boyfriend. And that filled me with a lot of guilt. So I had no trouble sort of facing the fact that I was a sinner. And I went, this is such a bizarre conversation to be having in my living room late at night while my parents are in bed. But I was intrigued. And so then he said, well, there's a solution to this problem. And he said, the solution is that Jesus came and lived on this earth. He died, he raised from the dead, and he died to pay the penalty of the sins that I had committed. And I went, okay, all right. Not really sure. I knew a few stories about Jesus, but how does that really impact me personally? But again, I was intrigued. And then I started to feel really nervous. My stomach started churning, and it was like I sort of expected something was coming that I wasn't sure that I wanted to listen to. I don't know how to describe it other than that. And then he said what I basically had to do to avail myself of this wonderful gift of Jesus Christ in my life is that I had to admit I was a sinner. I had to repent, change my mind about the way I was living, and believe in this Jesus and to follow him, to accept his forgiveness that he was giving me for the price that he paid for me, and to live for him for the rest of my life. And then I started to put a wall up because I was like, okay, that's really nice for you to say, Miss Church Boy, but Mr. Church Boy, but my life hasn't been so great. And so part of me wanted to take some time to think about it. So I just was nonchalantly saying, can I have that booklet? Because I wanted to think about it a little more. And he hesitated. And literally, I felt like I was going to tackle him if he didn't give me that booklet, not knowing there's thousands of these booklets around the world, if not millions. But I'd never heard this story before, right? So finally, after some hesitation, he gave it to me. And then we left, and he invited me to church that next morning. And I went, oh dear, it's something go to these college and career social things, but to actually go to church? Okay. Um, and I didn't want to ask him, do I wear a dress? Like, what do I? Because I didn't know what the attire should be. Anyways, I went several weeks in a row with him. It was odd to me. Things were different. I didn't know when to stand, when to sit down. I didn't fully understand everything that was going on in the service, but I kept thinking about this booklet. And I kept thinking at some point, I want to make this choice because this choice might make a difference in my life. And then I thought of the way I'd prayed. If there's a way to change my life around, maybe this was it. And then the college and career group went to a music concert and on the other side of town, and we all went. And I heard the most inspiring music I'd heard in my life. I was glued to it. I'd never heard anything like it before. It was spoke to my life, and then they had a song called "The Savior is Waiting to Enter Your Heart," and I went, "Ooh, that's kind of like what's out of this booklet, right?" And there was something inside me that made me just jump up and go in the aisle. A number of people were going up to the front. I honestly didn't hear the speaker saying, come to the front. I just felt like that song touched me so much that I went into the aisle and and then I'm thinking, I have left my purse behind. Somebody's going to steal it. There was this little girl up there. She was crying. I was thinking maybe I'm supposed to cry with these things. And I just didn't understand, honestly, what was going on. But it was a long time of people waiting and singing this song. And then when I got to the front, I thought, I wonder if they'll let me do what that booklet says. And so when the person at the front asked me why I was up there, I said, I'm trying to describe this booklet to her. And can I pray? There's some kind of prayer in here. Can I do that here? And she said, by all means. But in the middle of all this, everybody's leaving the church, and I'm going, there goes my ride, there goes my purse. Everything inside me is saying, you need to leave. But I stayed, and I'm so grateful. I stayed. I made that prayer, and then it was, where's my purse? Where's my ride home? And I ran out, and I didn't realize the whole college and career group was on their knees praying for me. And they had seen my struggle. They had seen that they didn't know my whole story at this point. They saw me as a champion athlete, student leader, this very successful person. They didn't know what was going on at home. They didn't know about the choices I made and how I didn't love myself. I wanted to die. And so, I was so glad to make that choice. And I had been so depressed for so long. I didn't smile. I'm known a lot these days for my smile, but back then I didn't have one at all. And I came home and the depression lifted. I was joyful. My mom wondered what happened to me. Did I get in a cult? Like, what is this? But I went, I feel different. And I realized that I had entered into a relationship with a living person called Jesus Christ. And that was bizarre to me. I didn't fully understand the choice I made, but the difference in my life, it's the best choice I made ever in my whole life. And then began a journey of growing and reading a Bible, learning going to church more regularly, going to Bible studies. And the more that I read and the more that I grew, the more I realized this is the most important choice of my life. It's changed me forever. And I love Jesus. He's my best friend. People will say to me, well, who's your best friend? I said, Jesus. And they look at me like, really? But he is. I talk to him through prayer every day. I read the Bible, learn more about him every day. And the desire of my heart is that everybody has what I have because he's made the difference in my life. And I'm so grateful for him. It doesn't mean everything's been wonderful because it hasn't. I've had ups and downs and challenges in my life, but I'm not going through them alone. I'm never alone. As relationships have come and gone in my life since then, his is the most important one for me. And I want everyone to have what I have because it's real. It's not fake. I've not been brainwashed. It's a reality. I love Jesus and I want everyone to know about him.
If you would like to contact Tina directly, please email her at tneudorf2@gmail.com. TNEUDORF, the number 2@gmail.com. Thank you for watching the Speaking Jesus 101 podcast. I pray that the Lord has touched your life somehow today. Please feel free to like, share, comment, or subscribe. If you are interested in getting in touch with me directly, please email me at speakingjesus101@gmail.com. Until next time, this is Karen Wells saying, may God bless your day.